Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine, your survivor's guide to the cultural apocalypse. And today we're exploring optimization culture and asking whether this idea that life is a quantifiable system to be hacked and continuously improved upon is actually creating a deeply suboptimal life. This week, a clip featuring Diary of a CEO host and Dragon's Den investor Steven Bartlett went viral when he sat down with fellow peak productivity enthusiast Chris Williamson, where he explained that after a long period of sobriety, he drank 3 glasses of wine with friends and it, quote, ruined him for the next 3 days. I'll play that clip in a moment. Now, some in the comments leapt to his defense. Fair enough, cutting alcohol from your life is a legitimate personal choice, but the louder response was about something else entirely. It wasn't the sobriety people took issue with, it was the measurement of it. The Whoop ban, the sleep scores, the idea that a normal Thursday evening with friends had become a biometric failure, a data point to be analysed, regretted, and optimised away the next time. I say this as someone who, while researching this episode, realized he has quietly accumulated an alarming number of optimization protocols of his own, which need to be audited live on the air today. But I can't measure the success of this podcast by checking my blood oxygen saturation levels alone. For that, I'm going to need a man who, I should warn you, refuses to record with me if his Garmin watch reports a stress level above 30. John, have you done your cold plunge, written in your gratitude journal, and checked your Aura ring to ensure your podcast host energy levels are high enough to produce an entertaining episode with me today, sir?
Lovely, thank you, Al. Yeah, I'm optimized in every conceivable way, and I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, you are my optimization buddy. I think I'm going to need a little bit of optimization intervention today, live on the air.
Yeah, it's a Sunday afternoon here in Melbourne, and when you told me this was the kind of idea that you had for this week, I made sure that when we came to record on a Sunday, I would still have a mild hangover from the night before, just to establish my own defiance. I went to the pub near us with my child, which is like a dirt bag.
Are you allowed? I guess we're getting big enough now, John, that you probably shouldn't give away these kinds of location details. You can't say what pub you went to.
Don't need people hassling us when I'm down at the pub with my daughter. But I just had a total. What would, for anyone in that community, would be a total failure, basically just eating loaded fries and drinking pints and waking up feeling slightly dusty.
You've got an obsession with loaded fries. Every time I speak to you, always just like, oh yeah, had another loaded fry.
I had jalapeno poppers, had loaded fries. And I had chicken wings. It was a massive failure.
That is absolutely the kind of anti-optimization experience. The experienced anti-optimization king that I need to speak to.
Transient pleasure at the expense of long-term health.
You'd be the psychologist who, when taking on a client who was over-optimizing, would just prescribe jalapeno poppers over the weekend.
Yeah. Diary of a big popper, they call me.
They call me Big Popper, you say, as you throw.
I like the way jalapeno. You call me Big Popper.
It's funny, actually, in preparation for this episode, I had 1.5 small beers last night, and this is going to come up as well as the other inspiration for this episode is that I have been seeing a little bit more anti-optimization messaging coming out on social media and podcasts and things over the last maybe like 3 to 6 months.
Yeah,
which has sort of given me pause for thought. And I'm always a little bit skeptical because I always think that, when I always think that somebody's telling me that I should have a couple more beers, I always think there's some Svengali at Anheuser-Busch behind the scenes, just like coming up with paying influencers to say you all need to start drinking again. But
Could be that's part of
Yeah.
what's going on. Bit of a thank you for smoking fire behind it all.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I have been having a couple of beers, I would say, over the last month after not drinking very much in the months leading up to that. However, I suppose we'll also get to this. We can also talk about my recent trip to Melbourne and how we sort of drank or didn't drink went on during my visit to you. So yeah, John, the inspiration for this episode came this week because this clip of Steven Bartlett, who a lot of people know as the host of the extremely popular Diary of a CEO podcast.
Yeah.
He was a guest on the podcast of a friend, Chris Williamson, who, as I mentioned, is also a fellow sort of optimization productivity nerd. I believe in the clip that has gone viral, not only is Steven Bartlett talking about the fact that 3 glasses of wine ruined him, but I believe that Chris Williamson, as he's asking him these questions, is wearing anti-blue light blocking sunglasses. So it's kind of ridiculous. Like you're just watching this like guy with blue blocker glasses on talking to his friend, talking about how he had wine with friends and it ruined his week.
It was a total wreckage.
Yeah, and it was a total wreckage. Yeah, as I mentioned, so I've really noticed this kind of anti-optimization movement, which I think is really interesting. It was also kind of spurred on by a recent episode of the Coleman Hughes podcast where he had a guest on called Edward Slingerland, who basically has came on and argued that there's like several crucial evolutionary and societal functions of alcohol. It was basically an argument in support of what kind of turned out to be moderate alcohol consumption.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe to set the stage, the best thing to do is just to play this clip of Steven Bartlett so that everybody can understand exactly what everybody was jumping in the comments about this week. I think this podcast is 5 months old from Chris Williamson. So this is kind of interesting that this was out there for 5 months. And then, it's the magic of clips where somebody either discovered the clip, but probably more likely somebody clipped this old clip and gave it a new title, which made it a bit more enticing. Like Steven Bartlett's a big wuss who can't drink 3 glasses of wine,
Steven Bartlett's a disgraceful lightweight. Yeah,
that's right. He's a super super fragile little man. So this is the clip for everybody. Everybody will be able to listen to this and enjoy.
It's one of those areas where you don't understand the hidden cost until you really give it up for a while. And I think about my own relationship with drinking, and I stopped drinking at 30 years old. I'm now 33. And I had just drank because I just drank. I'd never ran the experiment of just giving it up for a while. And then I don't know, maybe I was at 31. I thought, I'll have a drink again because now I could really A/B test it. I had a year of not drinking, decided to have a drink again.
It's great to A/B test it. It's just so good.
Ran the experiment. I mean, that's not really how I approach my life. Maybe I'll run the experiment of just having a fistful of loaded fries and A/B test tomorrow with a jalapeno popper.
Say that to your partner Jacinta when she says, "Oh, maybe you should lay off the loaded fries and jalapeno poppers," and you're like, "Darling, I'm A/B testing this experiment, right?"
Exactly.
Like,
got to see it through.
Are you against science?
Yeah. Well, I'm doing this until I'm 45, and then I'm going to switch to to just fries that haven't been loaded until I'm 50.
And then I'll give you and I promise you I'll give you the data. I'll hand the data over to you. All right, I'll continue the clip.
It ruined 3 days of my life. I had a couple of glasses
so hang on,
of wine,
I'll wind it back.
Decided to have a drink again. It ruined 3 days of my life. I had a couple of glasses of wine, didn't get drunk. No. It ruined 3 days of my life because of the domino effect it caused. So it meant that I got worse sleep that night. And then because I got worse sleep that night, I ate more poorly the next day because my dopamine system or whatever, the cortisol system was all messed up. Resilience, yeah. And then I podcasted worse. I didn't go to the gym the day after, that day or the day after because of that, because I felt really bad. I then slept worse, and I could track all of this on my Whoop, #ad, #sponsor, #investor, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, those 3 glasses of wine had this hidden domino effect that I must have been living with for my whole life.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
So it's 5 months old. So that clip comes out this week and gets a ton of people in the comments. And initially, it's really funny actually. I read a lot of the reaction, and lots of people had lots of different reactions to it. I actually ended up reading a couple of Substack articles from people that are in the alcohol industry, and they were coming at it from hey, alcohol is not as terrible as everybody thinks, and it's this really incredible social bonding tonic that has benefited our society for many years. Yes, you probably don't want to have 5 glasses of wine right before you go to bed if you have a presentation the next morning, but 3 glasses of wine with friends, if you think of the social benefit of that and the fact that we're all getting lonelier and more isolated. So that was one of the angles. And then a lot of other people said, hey, look, I myself am also sober, but my criticism is not that he abstains from alcohol. It's that he seems to be measuring every aspect of his life, through data and wearables. You will also notice in this clip, he says, for anybody who doesn't know, he says, my Whoop band, gave him all the data, #sponsor, because he has some sort of affiliation or is an investor in Whoop, which is one of these wearables that tracks a lot of your data, your heart rate, gives you your sleep score, all of this kind of stuff.
Fitbit type.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And
mine blew up last night, so I had to take it off.
Your Fitbit just started flashing red.
It got really hot to the touch.
It just said, we've told you no more loaded fries. I just had loaded fries alert.
Screaming at loaded fries. And I'm like, let's agree to disagree. It just blew up.
This Fitbit can only tolerate 5 more servings of jalapeno poppers before you're just like eating jalapeno poppers and downing pints, and your Fitbit is just smoking on your wrist, setting off the fire alarm in the pub.
This thing never works. Yeah. I misunderstood. I thought it was supposed to like make me fit if I wore it. And it didn't do that. Didn't offset any of the detriment.
It was just nagging you the whole time, telling you off. I mean, this is one of the criticisms is also of the fact that these wearable devices have kind of turned our lives into data. So some of the response from people was, I don't drink, but this thing of measuring everything, quantifying everything, and maybe avoiding any type of what you might see as suboptimal outcome. Yeah. Because for example, somebody says, "Hey, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example that I'm facing right now.
Yeah,
I am wanting to take up salsa classes in Berlin, and they start really late for me. Like they start at 8:45 in the evening, and that's gonna get me home by I don't know, like fucking 10:30 probably, right, and then I'm going to be all full of Latin rhythms, and that's not going to be. That's going to make it difficult for me to go straight to sleep. So I'm probably going to
that'll set off your restless leg syndrome. You'll get you'll be paso dobleing when you're supposed to be. Yeah.
I'll just have Gloria Estefan going around in my head.
Right.
And I just won't be able to sleep. Come and shake your body, but do that conga. So this is the kind of thing where like if I was and I'm going to have to accept that I'm going to be tired at work the next day. And my routine, which I have become very fond of, is going to be really thrown off.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm going to meet the love of my life.
Exactly.
Isn't that worth and I'm going to learn to this beautiful dance.
That's a very good point. I mean, this is such an interesting topic and one I'm always kind of thinking about, partly because, I think there's a kind of generational difference that's so stark in this department. Like, I've been spending a little bit of time with my parents and Jacinta's parents lately, and they're both sets of parents drink at a level that would make Steven Bartlett like call an ambulance. Basically, they don't think anything about just kind of opening a bottle of wine with dinner and having a I don't know, like finishing off the bottle between a few people. So they're each having maybe slightly less than what Stephen had, but like they would think nothing of having 3 glasses of wine and getting up the next day. And I guess part of that is that their bodies have conditioned to deal with that, whereas his isn't. So there's a certain kind of self-fulfilling probably effect where you're kind of very tuned into your body's ups and downs.
Yeah, your parents, there's not a lot of whoops at the dinner parties.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Your parents and in-laws.
But I imagine Stephen's sort of constantly not just looking at the feedback that he's getting from his whoop and everything else, but also just kind of mentally very attuned to sort of checking in with his body and how am I feeling and this and that. And that's obviously a very powerful thing. Like, I mean, people who experience, say, chronic pain or whatever, they kind of go through a much more pronounced version of the same thing. But the thing is, your mind and how you are habituated to kind of consider your own well-being is very powerful. And for those boomers, they might feel a bit dusty in the morning, but they just kind of barrel through and they don't really think about it. And they sort of get by. And, Jacinta's dad has had a successful career and wouldn't say, oh, this would have gone better if I had drank less. Just wouldn't be part of his assessment at all. But the idea of dancing is interesting because it reminded me of a quote from a beloved writer, Kurt Vonnegut, who has this lovely little passage, which to me is a kind of great antidote or a great sort of counterpoint to the optimization sort of mindset. So, and he refers to kind of human beings as dancing creatures, but he says, I'll just read it if that's okay. So he says, I work at home and if I wanted to, I could have a computer right by my bed and I'd never have to leave it. But I use a typewriter and afterwards I mark up the pages with a pencil. Then I call up this woman named Carol out in Woodstock and say, are you still doing typing? And she says, sure, I am. And her husband is trying to track bluebirds out there and not having much luck. And so we chit-chat back and forth and I say, okay, I'll send you the pages. Then I'm going down the steps and my wife calls up, where are you going? I say, well, I'm going to buy an envelope. And she says, you're not a poor man. Why don't you buy 1,000 envelopes? Then they'll deliver them. You can put them in a closet. And I say, shush. So I go down to the steps and I go out to the newsstand across the street where they sell magazines and lottery tickets and stationery. I have to get in line because there are people buying candy and all that sort of thing. And I talk to them. The woman behind the counter has a jewel between her eyes. And when it's my turn, I ask her if there have been any big winners lately. I get my envelope and I seal it up and I go to the Postal Convenience Centre down the block at the corner of 47th Street and 2nd Avenue, where I'm secretly in love with the woman behind the counter. I keep absolutely poker-faced. I never let her know how I feel about her. One time I had my pocket picked in there and I got to meet a cop and tell him about it. Anyway, I addressed the envelope to Carol in Woodstock. I stamp the envelope and mail it out in a mailbox in front of the post office and I go home. And I've had a hell of a good time. And I tell you, we're here on Earth to fight around and don't let anyone tell you different. And that's that kind of summarizes this experience of doing things in a deliberately sort of slow, shambolic,
more expensive often.
Yeah, more expensive, non-optimized way, but it's something that he deliberately opts into because he thinks of all of the kind of incidental benefits that it gives him, social interaction being one, exposing himself to kind of chance encounters and to little moments of wonder. And, I guess optimization, like one of the main criticisms of it is that you are sort of eliminating all of that potential to, like you're kind of thinking about your life in a very deliberate, very controlled, very sort of rationalized way that probably means you've got less chance of, coming up against small risks that you have to overcome, or enjoying things that you didn't anticipate, or, meeting someone who you hadn't planned to meet, or whatever it might be. And all of that is so beneficial to being a person in the world, I think, is to kind of, expose yourself to those possibilities rather than thinking about running experiments and A and B tests and so on. And the other thing that strikes me is like there's this weird overlap between, like, Steven Bartlett's a very successful person and would think of optimization as a way of kind of building his own capacity and resilience and so on, and wouldn't be averse to hard work or anything. But there is this kind of strange overlap between the sort of optimization talk and this sort of, talk of oneself in very fragile, sort of therapeutic, medicalized terms, as though like as though we're just like very fragile, like it's just 3 glasses of wine, Stephen, just calm the farm. And, like you haven't quote unquote ruined 3 days of your life. And if you have, like, you probably need to go on a dialysis machine, because 3 glasses of wine should not be doing that to you.
What a lot of people said as well is that essentially that thing that he said where he says it ruined 3 days of his life is in a way a kind of decision that he made the next day because you've mentioned there your parents and Jacinta's, they potentially are waking up having the same feeling that Steven Bartlett had, as in, I'm hungover, but it's all about the way that they're both, the difference in how they're interpreting that feeling. And so Steven's been trained to have that feel. And look, some of this will have definitely come from the fact that also he was sober for a year. So it is worth pointing that out, that it would have been more pronounced. But, but he's going to wake up with that feeling and he's going to kind of panic. And I know this for myself. Like you have a lot of guilt and shame because you've told yourself, I'm the type of person that doesn't their life up, and then you do something that you had all these memories of having a good time with alcohol. Then it maybe started to get a little bit, you thought that it got too much, and so you really cut back, and so now you associate having a drink with a kind of relapse. So you wake up with a hangover and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I've done this. I feel terrible. And then you go, oh, now because I feel terrible, I don't feel like doing anything else, and I'm just not going to do anything else. Whereas somebody who's just like a more consistent drinker will just wake up with a hangover and just not for a second feel shame. Or think, oh, I just won't do the things that I need to do. So a lot of I saw one comment from Twitter where some guy was like, oh, you had 3 glasses of wine and you couldn't go to the gym. That sounds like a skills issue.
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously there are people, and again, as you say, like if you do have a year off booze, then it'll hit you pretty hard when you go back on it. And I've had those experiences of like having a decent break and then feeling like I didn't feel like I had that much, but it did have a pretty serious effect. But I agree. I think that the way that you process those signals from your body and rationalize it is so important to the experience that you have. I mean, when we were young, you'd wake up with a hangover and you'd almost feel like, oh, that's good. That's kind of a sign that I had a like full on experience, that I pushed the boat out, and it was kind of, now I can go and like enjoy some greasy food, and it's like part of the ritual of making.
I had this amazing bonding session with my friends.
Exactly. Yeah. And that sort of, sometimes, like, I don't know, I remember plenty of occasions where you'd wake up at someone's house after a house party or whatever, you'd feel pretty but you'd all go down and, eat some sloppy fast food or whatever, and then you'd kind of enjoy the day of sort of giving into your laziness for for the rest of the day or whatever, just like watching in bed. And it was it was kind of a very pleasant experience. And obviously it kind of does change when you, well, for one thing, when your body gets older, but also when you're there's nothing worse than parenting with a hangover. It's just unpleasant to the extreme. But
Man, I can't imagine. There's absolutely this is the other thing is like Steven, at the moment, I do not believe that Steven has had a child yet. And I don't expect that he would say, I had 3 glasses of wine and it ruined me and I couldn't tend to my child for 3 days and it died.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. You just get by. Sometimes I had one morning where Ines, my daughter, was literally like banging me on the back, being like, "Wake up!" And she couldn't say "wake up," but she was basically like, "I'm ready to do stuff," and you're just like, "Oh God!" But it's it's also this kind of mentality of I don't know, treating your body in a very machine-like fashion, and not and treating life as a kind of as a sort of algorithm to be mastered, or as a sort of calculation to be resolved. That's a very sort of very quite new, I guess, and quite odd,
totally new
way to think about your life.
Imagine the silent generation like going through any of that. Sorry, I can't come to the pub because it's going to my REM sleep, and I have to.
That's right.
It's sort of men that watch their friends' heads getting blown off in
that's
war.
right. Exactly. Well, that's an interesting point. I was listening to a podcast recently. Shout out to the rest it's history fellas.
Big fans of our podcast.
Yeah, they're huge fans. Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook.
Yeah,
we've got to get them on, actually. We'll get them to talk about the history of Adelaide or something one day. But that'd
be great.
But they did this thing on Gallipoli, and I was just thinking when you were talking about Stephen, saying that his life had been ruined by a few glasses of wine. Like, imagine telling that story to one of those guys that had just endured Turkish machine gun fire for 3 weeks.
What's that? Sorry.
Reminds me of that great scene in Curb where he gets, for some reason, the whole sort of plot leads up to this moment where a contestant on Survivor meets a Holocaust survivor, and they argue about their like relative hardships.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, it does kind of make you think, what a strange and quite novel way to think about your body and your life and all of that.
Yeah, and the question that I think a lot of people don't really ask and was asked during this back and forth after the Steven Bartlett wine clip, a lot of people said, okay, so you're optimizing your life, but what for? Like, why?
Exactly.
Are you trying to kind of are you trying to extend your life? And if that were the case, so this is kind of like very Brian Johnson. He's very much at the one of the peak personalities of this movement. If you think about Brian Johnson, we've covered him in an entire episode. Okay, so maybe you're trying to extend your life, but then it's like, but what are you filling that life with? And and maybe these people would argue, actually, I actually prefer optimizing. I get a lot of joy from optimizing my life much more than I would from having a glass of wine with friends. It's also an interesting philosophical question is like, how many years of your life would you be willing to shave off if somebody could say to you, look, you can smoke and you can drink and you can eat whatever you want,
Yeah.
Or this is how much of that you can have, and we can tell you. It's funny actually because this is actually starting to sound like a kind of optimized the way of measuring yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could have
You can optimize your de-optimal
exactly.
habits. How many?
Yeah.
Like, what's the? Let's say I don't care about my 80s, but I want to live until I'm 80.
Yes.
How often can I eat poppers and still make sure that happens? Once a week tops.
Yeah. How loaded can the fries be?
Exactly.
What level of load can the fries be? Yeah, like I don't know, like what do you could shave off, shave off 5 years or 10 years. I mean, shave off 10 years, but just fucking do whatever you want.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
You'd make so many friends and, you'd be down the pub every night. This is another thing that I wanted to speak to, John, is basically, there's a bit of talk around this debate about Gen Z. They're obviously the most so I got some stats here. Gen Z is the most wellness obsessed generation and the loneliest. 29% of young adults aged 18 to 29 report significant daily loneliness, higher than any other age group and directly coinciding with their elevated depression rates. Nearly half, 46% of Gen Z Americans have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. This is a generation that grew up with fitness apps, sleep tracking and wellness content on every platform. We've spoken a bit as well about the clean girl aesthetic that feels like it's in this world totally. A little bit as well, drinking the matcha. And I mean, a lot of this, it's difficult to find what people call third spaces these days. And we should really do a whole episode on third spaces. Third spaces when we grew up, it was, you didn't have to think about it. You went to the pub, that was it. You went to the pub and you had a few drinks and you felt sort of deeply socially connected to your friends and other people that you would see at the pub. I actually had in my notes, John, here, it's just interesting thinking about us growing up in our 20s in the early 2000s. And it was, you finish uni, you finish your first job, second job, and you would meet at the Cranker, Crown and Anchor.
Or the Exeter. Spent thousands of hours in there optimizing my life.
And think about how much joy you got from smoking cigarettes. I didn't smoke cigarettes ever in Australia since I moved to Europe. I occasionally will have a cigarette with a friend and a beer. Right. And I'm like, man, this is amazing. I should have been doing this in the early 2000s at Fad Bar and the Exeter.
Well, this is the thing. I probably did cut it out at a decent time in terms of hopefully not impacting my overall health. But there's two things to say there. Like, one is, obviously that is a huge plus for a lot of people and has been for generations. You think, a pub is a public house, and it was really literally a kind of living area for a lot of people who lived in kind of cramped housing or, in flats or whatever. They'd go down and sit by the fire and have a bit of chit chat and whatever. And that's the kind of, that sort of thing in America where you get little neighborhood bars at the bottom of buildings, and obviously the sort of Cheers model of like you go in, all the local characters, you debrief about your life a little bit or whatever, or you just kind of enjoy being in their company and not saying much or whatever floats your boat. But it's hard to imagine not doing that unless you are replacing it with something that's a kind of healthier version of that, or like an alcohol-free version of that. It's hard to imagine not doing that in itself being anything other than quite detrimental. But also, I guess, I sometimes think with these people, like even now with technology, with medicine being what it is, you're probably overestimating your capacity to control outcomes.
Totally.
You could, like, Brian Johnson could bloody have a brain aneurysm tomorrow. He doesn't know.
Or get lung cancer from having never smoked.
Exactly. And so there is something to be said for like, okay, we all know that you're going to increase your chances of getting cancer by smoking. But I think, you can do all the right things and still shuffle off at an unusually young age, or, something bad will happen to you that'll otherwise be decidedly suboptimal and potentially ruin more than 3 days of your life. So you do have to, there is something to be said for kind of not not trying to control everything, but also not living in this kind of permanent state of deferred gratification where you're like, I mean, maybe Stephen's going to be on his deathbed, when he gets some like random genetic disorder at 34 and thinks, fuck, I wish I hadn't optimized. I'd spent all those weeks boringly optimizing. I wish I just, there's that great line from Tism. I wish I'd done more drugs. I wish I'd slept with more girls. I wish you'd all go and get. Those will be those will be Steven Bartlett's last words.
That's fantastic. We just give it a shout out to my Uncle Dave, who's like the biggest Tism fan in the world. Shout out to Ron Hitler Barassi and the Tism crew. Right. You and I think I'm starting to think a little bit more about balance in my own life this summer, John. I'm kind of thinking of A/B testing, having a few more beers and staying out a little bit longer. I think some nights I will still be 100% sober because maybe I do have something to do the next day, or maybe I had a few drinks the previous week and I felt a little bit dusty. I don't know. When I visited you, you were very kind and shouted a very beautiful dinner. Shout out to some other DPTMers. Your brother Daniel and beautiful Mari was there as well, and you ordered a beautiful bottle of wine, and I didn't think twice about the fact, like, even though I hadn't been drinking a lot leading up to that point, I was like, of course I'm going to have a glass of wine in Melbourne with my friend John, and we're all going to chink the glasses and we had a beautiful time. But then at the same time, we would typically, you had a fridge full of naught alcohol-free beers that we'd sink during the day. Yeah,
it's true. That was maybe that was a good model. We didn't get up and get on the darts and the VBs first thing. We'd have a naught until the sun went down.
That's right. It is kind of a bit like that, isn't it? I mean, also day drinking to me just puts me to sleep. That's always just been, if I have, particularly if it's a sunny day and I have like 3 pints, I will just be tucked up under the pool table at the pub, just having little Z's coming out of my nose.
Honk shoe.
Honk shoe.
In your nightcap at the pub. That's right. Yeah. I think, obviously there is a point of, there is a balance to be struck, but I guess these people must get, they obviously get some payoff. And whether it's a sense of control or it's a sense of kind of, this sort of gratification that comes with self-discipline. Obviously I'm not the first person to make the comparison between sort of, this optimization types and kind of, penitent Catholics who would wear shirts that would make their skin itch and whatever because it made them sort of more aware of their physical frailty or the temporariness of life or whatever, or the kind of mortification of the flesh. It got a slight kind of vibe of that kind to it, where people are sort of, and I guess it's kind of, it's interesting that people are starting to push back against it because it's a difficult thing to push back against because, you can always say, well, I'm just like, what I'm doing is objectively good for me. I'm following the evidence. I'm making healthy choices. Like, why would you criticize that? But of course there is a point where it's, it's a slightly neurotic tendency. And as you say, like, loneliness is not a small thing. Like, loneliness kills people,
but that's not being tracked on the wearables.
Exactly.
And I think if it was, then I think people would have a different approach to this optimization. Totally. If maybe this, hey, look, I don't know if Garmin is a fan of the podcast. I don't know if they're one of the new 5,000 subscribers on YouTube that we have. Probably. I should go through this. There's probably Garmin in there somewhere. Probably because they've heard me mention them a couple of times and that I am a customer and they were going to get us in as an influencer. But if your Garmin said, how many social interactions? Here's how many social interactions you've had this week. This is the. I mean, you know, with AI, this is absolutely doable. You could say this is the quality of connection that you had with other humans, and if it fell below a certain level, it would say, "Hey, look, man, you didn't talk, Steven. You haven't spoken to anyone." Like all your friends
on your podcast.
Except on your podcast.
Yeah.
All of your friends went to the pub yesterday and had a pint, and they all connected, and you weren't there. And your social score is at a dangerous level. Your loneliness score has gone up.
You're sitting at the dining table alone with your blue glasses on, drinking bone broth in the dark.
Drinking Huel, that like Soylent Green meal replacement that he's involved in.
Right.
Just drinking Huel with blue blockers on alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Listening to a business podcast at 5 times speed.
Yeah, I mean, they should get on that. Gorman should have a watch that says how many moments of dizzying freedom have you experienced this week? Very few. Have you just walked outside and you kind of nicely buzzed and the air's bracingly cold and then you have a nice dart and have a chat to a stranger?
That's what it should say. Go down. We recommend you go down the corner store and get a packet of Marlboro Lights and a 6-pack of Cooper's Pale Ale.
Yeah.
And just fucking get an Uber down to the beach, invite a mate down and just sit down there and just go through the cigarettes and the Cooper's Pale Ale and just bring the Bluetooth speaker, play the first War on Drugs album from start to finish.
Oh, yeah. Man.
3 beers each, looking at the Southern Cross.
Bringing him a West End road.
Bringing him a West.
What are the neighborhood pubs called in Berlin? There's a particular name for them.
Kneipe.
Kneipe, right.
or Ecke Kneipe, which means corner pub, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All those people will be able to attest to all the Kneipe heads will be able to attest to the therapeutic value of a corner pub. Although I did walk into one and I didn't immediately think this environment's great for my mental health.
Yeah, they are a. It's funny actually. The football's about to start, so they're going to be absolutely rammed because the World Cup is about to start.
Yeah.
Maybe to close out, John, I can go through a couple of things that started getting mentioned in these articles, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd do that. Oh yeah, I'd do that as well. Oh yeah, I'd do that. And I was like, this maybe needs to be addressed. So I do have a Garmin.
Right.
I do check my sleep score in the morning. I do take cold showers in the morning. I do journal. I do meditate. I run marathons. I mostly don't drink. I do have blackout curtains. And I do try and I do a lot of meal prep and try and eat well. And I'm just not really sure that any of this is working out for me.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a happy medium, and I could stand to do a bit more of that. I've just started meditating.
Is that right?
Yeah, I always kind of go for a while and then I go off the rails for a bit and then I commit to it again. But I'm on one of my streaks, and it always does make me feel nice. And,
measuring your streak.
Exactly, measuring the streak. And for a while, I remember I measured my sleep when I was getting very poor sleep when I started as a barrister and I was stressed out of my mind. And it was a great little app that used to record. Maybe they still do this, like the big ones, I don't know. But it used to record, like if I was snoring, it would record it for like a 10-second. Or if I talked.
This was just your phone. This was just your phone.
Just
John. This
my
wasn't
phone,
a wearable.
That's right. It was just an app that you would open. You'd have kind of running in the background on your phone, and it would try and estimate based on like I guess, how much you were moving and how much whether it could hear you snoring. But it would like give me these little chilling, weird snippets in the morning of like 10 seconds of me snoring, and then maybe of like me shouting something in my sleep. I'd get to hear that, or like dropping my guts in the night. I get to hear that. So that was kind of, I mean, this was, 10 years ago. So it was before that stuff really caught on. And my sleep didn't really improve. And eventually I was just like, well, I'm just not going to use the app anymore because it's just depressing me. And eventually my sleep did improve, but not because of anything the app was doing, I guess. It was just, I moved to a slightly less stressful period of my life and things got better again. But data, I think, can obviously and sort of not just having the information, but kind of poring over it can obviously, it can do a lot of good, but it can protract the experience of something like bad sleep, because obviously you're just fixating on it and thinking, I need to fix this and blah, blah, blah.
I have a couple of quotes here, John, that I found from a writer on has a Substack called Grape Nomad, and he's been involved in the wine industry. His name is Alexander Draganek, and there's a couple of great quotes from him here. He wrote a whole article in response to the Steven Bartlett thing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay.
And he said, when you strap a biometric tracker to your wrist and give it permission to narrate your biology, you are outsourcing your self-knowledge to an algorithm. You wake up after a dinner that felt good, friends, laughter, a bottle of something awesome and delicious. And instead of trusting how you feel, you check your recovery score. It says 34. Suddenly your world falls apart, which speaks to exactly what you were putting your finger on there. And then this last amazing quote, he says, my granddad didn't track his HRV. He drank Slivovica at 11 a.m. every day, watching my grandma smoke cigarettes with her coffee on the porch, and they both lived into their 80s. This is not a health argument. I am not suggesting you pick up a pack of Marlboros for longevity. In Bosnia, wine and rakia and strong coffee and late dinners weren't vices to be managed. They were the fabric of life. They were how you sat with your father after a hard week, how you celebrated a baptism or mourned a funeral, how you argued about football until 2 a.m. and still showed up to work the next morning without telling anyone your recovery score, which I thought was quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I mean, there is this is the other thing, isn't it? There's no poetry in any of this optimized stuff. Like, that's so evocative, that piece. And look, I'm not saying, I mean, fuck, that sounds fucking great though. Like, just
it does.
Strong coffee and cigarettes, and
you want to talk to that guy, who's living that life, and you maybe want to write a book about him or a poem or something, or you don't want to have your protagonist your cool protagonist is some guy who's just like anxiously checking his scores, and that's not cool.
It'll be the end of literature. People will just stop telling stories. There'll be no more stories. Or they'll just be like stories about what you did that improved your productivity.
Just three. Just maybe a story about how Steven overcame having 3 glasses of wine one time and it'll do a sort of blow by blow of how his life went to pieces in 3 days and how he put it back together. I say we start a new podcast called Diarrhea of a CEO
about loaded fries and
your body.
It's just about where you can find the best loaded fries and jalapeno poppers around Melbourne. Diarrhea of a CEO. It should just be about trying to find like the worst things you could do to your digestive system around Melbourne.
Exactly. Steven Bartlett just having kind of various sort of horrific cocktails at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then eating like a chip sandwich, chip buddy.
Well, John, I'll keep everybody updated on my
on your
on my
A/B test.
moderation and see on my A/B test over summer, letting in a little bit more indulgence, a little bit more late nights, maybe a little bit, just a little bit more blackouts, and
One or two
more blackouts. I was at Berlin nightclub name of Renata last night. Shout out to my friend Amy and my friend Angela, who were DJing. That's where I was having a couple of beers. And I'll keep everybody posted on how my salsa classes are going.
Yeah,
and how
I'd love to hear that.
How I become I've kind of got a bit of a like salsa club singlet on here. This would be my look at the salsa club. I'd have a high tight pant.
Yeah,
loose,
with a nice pleat.
tight. Yeah, exactly. And then I would have my little dancing shoes on, and I would absolutely be a little snappy little Paul Mercurio. Meet my wife.
Well, he had it worked out.
Paso Doble.
He was in Strictly Ballroom and obviously was a genuinely good dancer. But years later, he was also on the homebrew kit instructional video, which showed that he had a passion.
That's right.
For
it was
beer.
Cooper's, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right.
You would have just watched him on Channel 7 in Strictly Ballroom, and then you needed to know how to make homebrew beer. And there he was again. And you just thought, is there anything this man can't do?
Slightly doughier form that he took at that stage. But he was like telling you all about, you just got to wait for the fermentation process to complete. And you've got a keg all your own. You can invite your friends round and have a delicious homebrew, and maybe a Paso Doble.
Yeah, and then as he was drinking at the very end of the Cooper's homebrew kit instructional video, you just see him cheersing friends with a homebrew, and it's playing John Paul Young's "Love Is in the Air," and everybody. And then the credits roll, and it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, John. This has been a great episode of Don't Praise the Machine this week. Everybody, if you've enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend, please. That's our one ask at the end of this episode. We have had quite an influx of subscribers on YouTube over the last couple of weeks, which I think we'll probably speak about in a bit more detail, particularly on After Dark. If you want to check us out, After Dark, it's the members only episode, the best way to support the podcast. Patreon.com/DPTM. And we've absolutely loved having all those new subscribers coming in. If you're a new subscriber here, chuck a comment on the YouTube and say, I found you from that short.
Yeah.
And I didn't know from the YouTube short that was about the overexposed stock model. I never knew that I'd get a 50-minute long podcast about optimization culture that would end with reference to Paul Mercurio. And that's absolutely warm the heart. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. And we can't wait to see you next week.
Podcast.